Have you ever felt like some people go out of their way to test your patience, just to see how far they can push you? When someone wants to see you lose control, they'll start doing this. They poke, they prod, they disrespect you subtly, hoping you'll snap, so they can say, "See, I knew you couldn't handle it." But what if I told you that the moment you stop reacting emotionally, that's when you become untouchable in their eyes? It's like a mosquito buzzing around a room, harmless but desperate for a reaction. Or like a kid poking a sleeping dog just to see if it growls. The more you stay calm, the more they panic. And the moment you stop giving them the bite they're hoping for, that's when they realize they were never in control. Because while they're hoping to provoke you, you have two choices: let them control your peace, or rise above and stay unbothered. And when you choose self-control over reaction, that's when the power shifts. The moment you stop proving yourself, they realize they never had control to begin with. So, how do you handle someone who keeps testing your limits? Stay until the end, because the final truth might just change how you respond to conflict forever. Let's begin. Number 1. Recognize the trap. It's about control. Let's talk about one of the most manipulative behaviors we encounter. Someone trying to provoke you, not to resolve anything, but just to watch you react. This kind of person isn't interested in understanding, clarity, or peace. They poke at your pride, challenge your composure, and say things they know will get under your skin. And why? Because if they can get you to lose your cool, they win. That reaction, they feed off it. It gives them a sense of control. But here's the key. Once you recognize what's really happening, everything changes. Here's the truth. When someone provokes you, they aren't looking for resolution. They want a reaction. Their power comes from your response. The louder you defend yourself, the more you explain, the more you yell, the more control they have. But when you stay calm, when you don't give them the emotional energy they're trying to extract, their power collapses. That's why composure is not weakness. It's dominance in its highest form. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes essential. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." That quote hits hard because it reminds us that no one can truly control us without our permission. If your peace is shaken, it's not just because of them, it's because your mind agreed to hand it over. But the moment you see their behavior for what it is, a trap, you step outside of their game entirely. You don't have to play. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Jacob, had a co-worker who constantly tested him. In meetings, this person would interrupt, throw subtle jabs, and make sly remarks designed to embarrass or frustrate him. And in the beginning, Jacob fell for it. He'd snap back, argue, or try to explain himself. But the more he reacted, the more it happened. One day, after a particularly tense exchange, Jacob went home and reflected on it. He realized this wasn't about him. It was about control. His co-worker wasn't attacking because Jacob was wrong. He was attacking because Jacob's calm confidence made him uncomfortable. From that day forward, Jacob stopped taking the bait. He didn't respond to sarcasm. He didn't flinch when challenged. He simply paused, looked the man in the eye, and moved on. And over time, the provocations stopped. Not because his co-worker changed, but because the game stopped being fun. Jacob's refusal to react took all the power away. So how do you stay calm when someone tries to provoke you? First, recognize the trap. See it for what it is, a play for control. Second, take a breath and ground yourself in the moment. Your calm is your armor. And finally, remind yourself that true power is quiet. Anyone can explode. Few can stay still. At the end of the day, when you refuse to react, you refuse to be controlled. And in that silence, in that pause, you rise above them entirely. Number 2. Let silence be your weapon. Let's talk about one of the most underrated tools you can use when someone's trying to provoke you. Silence. Not the kind that's cold or dismissive, but the kind that's intentional, controlled, grounded. When someone pushes your buttons, they're hoping to get a rise out of you. They want noise, drama, reaction. But when you respond with calm silence, you strip them of exactly what they're looking for. And that's when everything shifts. Because silence, it's not weakness, it's power in its purest form. Here's the truth. People who provoke aren't looking for solutions, they're looking for fuel. The moment you raise your voice, get defensive, or explain yourself too much, you feed the fire they started. But silence deprives them of oxygen. It leaves them grasping. It creates a kind of discomfort they didn't expect, because when you don't react, they're left to face themselves. And in that stillness, they're no longer in control. You are. This is where Stoic wisdom gives us an edge. Epictetus said, "Let silence be your general rule," or say only what is necessary and in few words. Think about that. When you choose silence over reaction, you're not backing down. You're standing firm without stepping into their chaos. You're protecting your energy, your dignity, and your peace. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Rachel, had a boss who was sharp with words and quick to humiliate. He'd single her out in meetings with passive-aggressive comments, hoping to fluster her or make her stumble in front of others. At first, Rachel would try to defend herself, explain, clarify. But the more she talked, the more he twisted her words. Until one day, she stopped. The next time he made a cutting remark, she didn't flinch. She didn't explain. She didn't even look rattled. She simply paused, met his eyes, and said nothing. The room fell still, and for the first time, it was him who looked uncomfortable. From that day on, something changed. He became more cautious, more calculated. Why? Because Rachel's silence showed she was no longer playing the game. She wasn't there to prove anything. She had nothing to explain, and that shook him. Because silence, when used with strength, creates pressure that noise never could. So, how do you use silence as your weapon? First, pause before reacting. Let your silence speak louder than your words ever could. Second, understand that not every attack deserves a reply. And finally, trust that your presence, your composure, is often the most intimidating response of all. At the end of the day, when you stay silent in the face of provocation, you're not losing the battle, you're winning it. Because the moment you stop feeding their fire, they're left to burn in their own frustration. Let silence be your strategy. Let it be your shield. Let it be your strength. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3. Breathe before you speak. Let's talk about one of the most overlooked defenses against provocation: your breath. When someone pushes your buttons, the first thing that reacts isn't your mind, it's your body. Your chest tightens, your heart rate rises, your jaw clenches. It all happens before your brain even has a chance to process what was said. And that's the danger, because in those split seconds, your reaction takes over. But here's the secret. A single deep breath can change everything. Here's the truth. Provocation activates the body before the mind. That's why your best response is not a comeback, it's a pause, a breath. When you inhale slowly and exhale with intention, you reset your nervous system. You create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, something powerful happens. You choose calm over chaos. You don't let their aggression decide who you are in that moment. You decide. This is where Stoic wisdom shows its strength. Marcus Aurelius said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." Read that again. Not louder words, not a sharper argument, not winning the moment. Calm is strength. That breath you take before you speak, that's not weakness, it's mastery. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Brian, was in a heated argument with his brother over something personal. Voices were rising, tempers flaring, and the tension in the room was thick. In the past, Brian would have snapped, said something he'd regret, matched anger with anger, but this time he remembered something he'd learned from his therapist. Before you say anything, breathe. So he did. One deep breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and in that small pause, something shifted. His heart slowed, his hands relaxed, and instead of yelling, he said calmly, "Let's take a moment before we ruin something that matters." The room went quiet. His brother, caught off guard, took a breath too, and just like that, a fight that was seconds away from exploding diffused into something manageable. Not because they agreed, but because Brian chose peace over pride. So how do you apply this in your life? First, notice your body's signal. That heat in your chest, that knot in your stomach, it's a cue. Second, breathe deeply before reacting. Even just 5 seconds can give your mind time to catch up with your heart. And third, speak only when your calm is louder than your anger. At the end of the day, power isn't found in how fast you respond, but in how well you control the moment. And when you breathe before you speak, you don't just save the conversation, you protect your peace. Every breath is a chance to return to yourself. So take it. Number 4, shift from emotion to observation. Let's talk about one of the most powerful mental shifts you can make when someone tries to provoke you, switching from emotion to observation. When someone attacks you, mocks you, or tries to trigger a reaction, your first instinct is emotional. You feel disrespected, misunderstood, maybe even insulted. But here's the key. The moment you allow emotion to lead, you give them control. The moment you pause, step back, and observe, you take it back. Here's the truth. When you stop reacting and start observing, everything changes. Instead of saying, "How dare they talk to me like that?" you ask, "What are they really trying to do here?" You shift from being the target to becoming the strategist. You detach from the drama and see the whole picture. You recognize their words are not about truth, they're about bait. And once you see it, the emotional hook loses its power. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your anchor. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That quote hits hard because it reminds us that when someone stoops low, the strongest response isn't to match them, it's to rise above them, to be unmoved, to stay centered. When you shift into observer mode, you stop playing the part they wrote for you. You take their script and throw it away. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Chris, had a teammate at work who constantly tried to get under his skin. Snide comments in meetings, sarcastic remarks about his ideas, little digs masked as jokes. In the past, Chris would take the bait. He'd get defensive, sometimes even lash out. But one day, he decided to try something different. Instead of reacting, he got curious. He asked himself, "Why does this guy keep doing this? What does he get out of it?" And just like that, the dynamic shifted. Chris realized it wasn't personal. It was insecurity. His teammate wasn't trying to debate, he was trying to distract. From that moment on, Chris stopped responding emotionally. He listened calmly, replied only when needed, and focused on facts instead of feelings. And soon, the provocations faded, not because the other guy changed, but because Chris stopped feeding the game. So how do you make that shift? First, notice the emotion, but don't act on it. Just pause. Second, ask yourself questions. Why is this happening? What's their motive? And third, respond with clarity, not heat. When you become the observer, you stay in control. At the end of the day, power belongs to the calm mind. And when you stop being the character in someone else's drama and start becoming the watcher, you don't just protect your peace, you reclaim your power. Because the one who sees clearly leads. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a thank God and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5. Know that not everyone deserves a response. Let's talk about one of the most freeing truths you'll ever learn. Not every confrontation deserves your energy. When someone challenges you, mocks you, or tries to pull you into an argument, the urge to respond can feel almost automatic. You want to correct them, defend yourself, prove your point. But here's the reality. Every argument is an invitation to lose energy, and some invitations are better left unanswered. Here's the truth. The louder someone demands your attention, the more you should ask yourself, do they even deserve it? Not every conflict is worth your time. Some people argue not to understand, but to exhaust you. They poke, twist words, and bait you, not for clarity, but for chaos. And the moment you engage, you've already handed over your emotional peace. That's why the strongest move isn't always the sharpest comeback. It's often walking away in silence. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a powerful shield. Seneca said, "To care for your own mind is not to engage with every fool." That quote isn't about arrogance, it's about discipline. You protect your mind the same way you protect your home, by controlling what and who you allow inside. When you argue with someone committed to misunderstanding you, you're not communicating, you're draining yourself for nothing in return. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Thomas, had a cousin who loved to debate, but never in good faith. Whether it was family matters or personal decisions, this cousin would always find a way to stir things up. At first, Thomas used to reply, trying to explain himself, trying to be the bigger person. But every conversation ended the same way, exhausted, frustrated, and doubting himself. Until one day, during a tense moment at a family dinner, Thomas just smiled, said nothing, and changed the subject. His cousin pushed again, trying to reignite the spark, but Thomas didn't give him the flame. That moment, it changed everything, because silence wasn't weakness, it was clarity. Thomas realized that peace is more valuable than proving a point to someone who doesn't want the truth anyway. So how do you know when not to respond? First, ask yourself, does this conversation bring value, or is it just noise? Second, listen to your body. If you feel tight, anxious, or defensive, that's a signal to pause. And finally, remind yourself that your time and peace are sacred. Not everyone gets access to them. At the end of the day, walking away doesn't mean you lost the argument. It means you won back your energy. Some people speak just to provoke. Let them. You're not here to argue with every fool. You're here to protect your mind. And sometimes the strongest voice is the one that stays quiet. Number 6. Stay anchored in your values. Let's talk about what truly keeps you calm when the world tries to shake you. Your values. In moments of conflict, when someone is pushing your buttons, it's tempting to meet fire with fire. You want to defend your pride, clap back, or prove your point. But here's the thing, every provocation is a test, and the ones who pass aren't the loudest or the fastest to respond. They're the ones who stay rooted in what they believe, no matter how hard the winds blow around them. Here's the truth. Provocation aims to push you off-center. That's the goal, to make you abandon your discipline, forget your peace, and step out of character. But when you're anchored in your values, when dignity, self-control, and clarity are your compass, nothing outside can pull you off course. You don't react because you don't have to. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. And when that inner foundation is strong, their chaos becomes irrelevant. This is where Stoic insight becomes your anchor. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Every moment of provocation is a sharpening stone, a chance to prove, not to others, but to yourself, that you've grown, that you can choose strength over ego, that you can remain calm, not because the situation is easy, but because you've built yourself to withstand the storm. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him David, worked in an industry where competition was fierce and egos ran high. There was one colleague who constantly tried to undermine him, subtle digs in meetings, eye rolls when David spoke, and whisper campaigns behind his back. Others told David to put him in his place, to fight back. But David didn't. Not because he was afraid, but because he had made a decision long ago. He would always lead with integrity, even when it was inconvenient. So instead of retaliating, David kept showing up, on time, prepared, professional, consistent. And over time, the energy shifted. That colleague's provocations began to look petty, childish, even desperate. And David? He gained respect, not just from others, but from himself, because he chose peace over pride. So, how do you stay anchored in your values? First, define them. Know what truly matters to you when things get hard. Second, practice them daily, especially when it's uncomfortable. And third, remember that your response doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. Silence, kindness, or stillness can say everything. At the end of the day, your values are your foundation. And when you stand firm in them, no amount of noise can shake you. Because a person anchored in truth doesn't react to chaos, they rise above it, above. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 7. Let time reveal everything. Let's talk about one of the most underrated forms of strength, letting time do the talking. When someone tries to provoke you, the pressure to respond quickly can feel overwhelming. You want to correct the lie, defend your name, expose their intentions. But here's the truth. Every impulsive reaction is a trade. You give up your peace to win a moment. And most of the time, that moment isn't worth it. Because the real power, it belongs to the one who remains still and lets time reveal everything. Here's the truth. The person who stays calm isn't ignoring the attack. They're outlasting it. When you remain composed, you give space for the truth to surface naturally. The ones who lie, manipulate, or provoke may win some attention in the short term, but they can't outrun time. Over days, weeks, and months, their patterns show, their motives unravel. People start to see clearly, and suddenly the calm one who didn't react becomes the one who earns quiet respect. This is exactly what Seneca meant when he said, "Time discovers truth." It's a Stoic reminder that you don't have to fight every battle with force. Some things aren't solved with words, they're solved with patience. And when you learn to sit in your stillness, you realize you never had to prove anything at all. You just had to wait. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Lauren, was the target of a smear campaign at her job. A co-worker twisted her words, questioned her intentions, and painted her as someone she wasn't. People began to distance themselves. Lauren was hurt, of course, but she didn't retaliate. She didn't defend herself to everyone or call out the co-worker publicly. Instead, she stayed grounded. She kept working hard, stayed professional, and let her consistency speak for itself. Weeks went by. People started noticing inconsistencies in the accuser's behavior. The exaggerations, the contradictions, it all began to fall apart. And one by one, those who doubted Lauren came back with quiet apologies, realizing the truth had been in front of them all along. She didn't win with defense. She won with time. So how do you practice this in your life? First, resist the urge to react when your emotions are high. Second, stay consistent. Integrity always holds up under time. And finally, trust the long game. People may believe the loudest voice in the room at first, but eventually they learn to see through the noise. At the end of the day, you don't need to expose anyone. You just need to stay centered. Because when you stay true to yourself and let time unfold, the truth has a way of revealing itself. Always. And the person who waited quietly, they're the one who walks away with real peace and real victory. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.